Okay, so the class is being recorded, and this is me, Dr. Sami Abdel Jalil, and this is our second class. Actually, we're officially kick-starting the course. Last time it was some kind of introduction into the course and into also the different time periods that we're walking through. Do you have any questions from last time? Did you attend last time? If you were here last time, raise your hands. Okay. طيب. Okay, so drop your hands. So again, it's A230A that we're doing, reading and studying literature. It's a very interesting course, I promise you. So we last time it was, like I said, it was an introduction to the course. What is it that we're doing, and what questions and issues we are addressing and stuff like that. So today we're taking it a step further, and we'll, like I said, officially starting the whole thing. Uh, Again, it's going to be the introduction to the Renaissance, because the Renaissance is our main concern, because it serves as background, socioeconomic and political, to whatever works we're having during that time. We're doing Othello and the Duchess of Malfi. So you cannot really understand Othello and the Duchess of Malfi unless and until you provide the right context. And the right context would be the Renaissance as a big umbrella, and under the Renaissance you have the Elizabethan age for Othello, and you have the Jacobean period for the Duchess of Malfi. They are very close in terms of time, so whatever applies to the Elizabethan age will apply also to the Jacobean period. Let me share my slides, and we are on our way. I'm sharing my slides. Can you see that?
Yes, we
Um,
can. Yes.
Nice, very good. So this is A230A, and this is me, and these are YouTube playlists where you're going to find all my past recordings. I have been doing the course for quite some time, and I record every single class. So you would do yourself a big service if before the class you go and check and prepare, perhaps in order to consolidate whatever we do here, you go after the class and also check the the recordings. They are there. This is, of course, together with the recordings of the semester, because we are recording the classes, as you may know. So if for example, we press this link, this YouTube link, it's going to take us to my YouTube channel. It's called Happy Learning. And this is the playlist that I have just pressed. As you can see, you will have all the recordings of the previous. Actually, I have two sets of recordings. Let me just press this one. So this is where you're going to find everything. You go to playlists, and you go to your course A230A. This is a fresh one. This is from summer. And these are the recordings during summer. They cover everything. I mean, by the way, we haven't changed anything. It's the same course calendar. This is one, and we also have another playlist, A230A here, and it's a bigger one where we also have, the recordings of a previous semester. This one is perhaps more complete. Okay, so the two of them will serve you well if you go out of your way and yeah, perhaps prepare from them or consolidate the knowledge and information that you get from here after the class. Okay, so let's move on. Perhaps I can take the link and put it in the chat for you to kind of save it. Let me put it in the chat. So this is the first one. Can you see it? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. It's in the chat if you would like to save it in any way. I don't know how, but I'm sure you will find a way. And then we have the second one. Let me go to the second one. This is the second one. No, this is not the second. Sorry. Second one is here. Oh, mm, mm. Okay, everyone, clear? This is together with podcasts that I generate from these classes. I don't want to overwhelm you with that, but I'll take those recordings and turn them into podcasts, nice and small ones. But I'll do that in when the time is right. Okay. So let's move on. We've been talking about procedural issues for quite some time. Okay. So what do we have here? We have a list of terms and concepts that we're likely to meet during the course. So it would be a good idea if we start by unpacking them so that when we meet them during and over the course, you don't find them challenging or difficult or perhaps stopping you from understanding what comes after them. So we have words like Renaissance, Revival, Elizabethan, Jacobean, Early Modern, and Anthology. I will talk about the etymology of these words. Etymology means the history of a word, how a word evolved and what it is composed of, and how it came into being. And then when we talk about terms, and because it's literature, we need to also know whether we're talking about fictional things, whether what we're saying is fiction. Fiction means having to do with the imagination, or non-fiction, which is prose, which is realistic, and everything in between. We'll talk about genres, and we will define what a genre is, and then we will be more specific and talk about a specific uh, kind of genre, which is drama or play. And because the course also has a novella, we'll talk about the genre of novella, and we'll also have time to talk about poetry, which is a major literary genre. So let's start by unpacking words like Renaissance, words like Elizabethan, Jacobean, and early modern, and even the word anthology. Let's talk about their history. So first of all, the word Renaissance, and we said that Renaissance means rebirth, and it's, if you know French, you know that it comes from a verb in French which means to give birth to. So what is it that we're giving birth to, or we're giving a new lease of life to? It's the literature, the philosophies, and the sciences of ancient Greeks and Romans. So the Greeks and the Romans had a very advanced civilization before Christianity. And for some reason, when Christianity came over, there was a shift of interest. People started to look at the works of the Greeks and the Romans as heathen, as infidel, as not godly or religious. So they refrained from them. They stopped dealing with them. They stopped benefiting from them. So this was the time that we last time referred to as the Middle Ages. So the Middle Ages is this time between ancient Greeks and ancient Romans and the early modern times of the Renaissance. So this uh, uh, time in the middle is called the Middle Ages, and sometimes we call it the medieval period, or we aptly call it the Dark Ages. And dark because of the fact that they stopped getting inspired by the classics, the Romans and the Greeks, and they shut their ears and their eyes against those lovely works, whether in philosophy, in science, in in all the secular aspects of life. And they focused in the Middle Ages on theology, on religion, on concepts that we now consider very obsolete and very impractical. So the Renaissance is a time period and is a movement that came towards the late, perhaps 12th century, early 13th century, to fight against that, to push back against the teachings of the Middle Ages. So the Renaissance we can expect to be giving birth to new concepts. Actually, they are not new; they are renewed, if you like. We're going all the way back for inspiration to the Greeks and the Romans with their philosophies, with their sciences, with their literatures, and all the other aspects. It started in Italy, but obviously it didn't stop there. It went all the way to other parts of Europe. And again, this revival of interest in the Greeks and the Romans started there, but it never ended. Now we're perhaps focused on England because this is English literature, and the Renaissance or during the Renaissance, Queen Elizabeth the First was, um, was reigning. She was the sitting queen of the time, and she was open-minded enough to allow for those winds of change to take root and to change. She was a patron of the arts. She encouraged geographical expeditions. They had a big military and navy, and so this was the time of the great geographical explorations, moving beyond the limits and the boundaries of Europe. So Elizabethan, when I say the Elizabethan age, I'm obviously referring to the 17th century, perhaps late 16th and early 17th century. And this is noted especially for the flourishing of arts and literature, and of all the literary genres, plays stood out as the most important genre. People started to write plays. And of course, this was the time when gigantic figures like Shakespeare and Marlowe and others flourished and grew and wrote their beautiful pieces of work. So, of all the other genres, um, drama and plays stood out as the most uh, interested in people and the most popular. So not very far away from the Elizabethan age was the Jacobean period, where this was the time of King James the First, and it was also similar in terms of the focus they had on science and on civil society, governance, um, and perhaps what goes right and what goes wrong when it comes to governance and government offices, and how to how to rule and govern and everything in between. Again, the focus in the Jacobean times was also on drama, and especially uh, revenge tragedy. So in the Elizabethan age, in Jacobean times, the focus was on drama, and of all the subgenres of drama, we have the tragedy, and more specifically, the revenge tragedy that had uh, uh, conventions that we will talk about. So the period that we are referring to as the Renaissance, which has the Elizabethan and the Jacobean ages under, is also referred to as the early modern times. Okay, so when we talk about times, and when we talk about literary times, if you like, and when we talk about the history of ideas, we put the trajectory, we divide the trajectory into time periods. We start off with the pre-Christian era. This is the time of the Greeks and the Romans. And then you have the Middle Ages, which coincides with the Christian era. And then you have the early modern times, which we normally call the Renaissance. And then you have the modern times, when we talk about perhaps the late 18th and early 19th century and after. And then you have the postmodern times. This is the period from perhaps 1950 uh, onwards. And this is what we're living. We're living in the postmodern era. The plays, and then the poetry and the poems that we're doing normally come in a book. If you have a number of writers and you have a collection of their poems or their drama, for example, we call the collection an anthology. It's a book who or which does not have one author. You have a number of authors, and you have a collection of perhaps poems or plays by different authors. This is what we call anthology. Again, literature, whenever we talk about literature, we divide literature into um, um, fictional or non-fictional. Of course, fictional having to do with purely with the imagination, the fact that we have authors who set their imagination free and come up with concepts and ideas that are or that are embodied by fictional events and fictional realized by fictional events and embodied by fictional characters. So this is fictional when we talk about plays, when we talk about poetry, when we talk about novels, these are all fictional. What is not fictional would be newspapers and essays that we read, articles. These are not fictional because they are inspired by real events. Um, Again, we said that what we're doing is literature, and literature is divided into kinds and types that we normally refer to as genres. So if you have literature, so under literature, so if we talk about the genres of literature, we will be referring to plays, we will be referring to novels, short stories, uh, poems. These are all called genres. And like I said, the genre of choice, the preferred genre in and during the Renaissance and during the Elizabethan and Jacobean ages was drama or plays. So if we talk about genres, and even genres can be divided or subdivided. So under, uh, for example, plays, as a genre, you would have subgenres like comedy, tragedy, tragicomedy. You would have comedy of manners, and stuff like that. When you talk, for example, about novels, you would have um, Gothic, the Gothic novel as a subgenre, fantasy stuff. When you talk about poetry, it can also have different genres. When you talk about the ballad, the ode, when we talk about the sonnet, the epic, these are all different genres when we talk about poetry. It's very important to know how to analyze a piece of work. So, again, appreciating poems and plays is very important, but obviously, as English literature major students, our role is larger and bigger than that. You don't only or you don't stop at appreciating a piece of work. You take it to the next level and you analyze a piece of work. So analyzing a piece of work is kind of breaking it down to its basic components. And when we talk about the basic components of a piece of work, we talk about its form. If it's a poem, for example, we talk about the rhyme and the rhythm. We talk about the music, the meter. We talk about the imagery and the figures of speech. These are all formal aspects. And then we also analyze any piece of work uh, um, in terms of themes and topics and ideas. So you have the formal aspects of a piece of work, and you have the thematic and the textual aspects of a piece of work. So the two approaches when it comes to approaching a piece of work are very important. There is this long-lasting trend to focus on the theme or the themes and the issues that the piece of work is addressing. And this is good and everything, but obviously it would that wouldn't be enough because you're talking about themes and ideas that you may meet in all the genres. So what distinguishes a genre from another actually is not the ideas, because the ideas are common and they can be expressed in the different genres. What really distinguishes a genre from another would be the formal aspects, the form. If it's a poem, so you need to check the rhyme, the rhythm, the imagery, because these are things that you will not find in a play, because a play is different. Not in a novel, because novels are not rhythmic or written in rhyme. So our approach is both thematic, where we focus on the themes and the ideas and the issues, and it is also formal, where we focus on the form, the formal aspects of a piece of work. If we talk about a play, we look at the language, this is form. We look at the stage directions, this is form. We look at how the characters communicate their ideas, this is form. Um, these are all very important aspects, and they help communicate the themes and the ideas that the writer is trying to get across to us. So let's move on. Again, I told you to perhaps prepare Othello, and we said that Othello is a play, right? And it's by Shakespeare. This is what we refer to as the text. And I provided the context. I provided the context last time and today too. So what is context? So you have the word text. Text we know. Text is the nas, a play by Shakespeare, a poem by Milton, right? A novel by Charles Dickens. These are all texts that you read. But in order to fully understand and appreciate the text, you need to have the context. Context is the background to the age in which that text was written, like what we've been doing for the past two classes. We've been talking about the context of plays like Othello and the Duchess of Malfi, the socio-economic forces that were at play and in action, the politics of the time, the traditions and the norms and the mores of the time. This is all called context, and it's very important for a full appreciation of the text. So now we know the difference. So what is it that we're doing? We're talking again about the Elizabethan and Jacobean drama, and we're treating or we're dealing with the treatment of love and death. And we have two representative plays. We have Othello and the Duchess of Malfi. Othello and the Duchess of Malfi are the two representative plays that we're doing. So, what do those two plays have in common? First of all, they are both tragedies, and both have characters who marry beneath their rank and status. Okay? So the choice is not random. The choice is very um, significant because perhaps the focus is on governance, is on hierarchies, and the honoring of those hierarchies. Remember what we said about the societies of the time in the Elizabethan, the Jacobean times. We have hierarchies of rank, we have hierarchies of race, we have hierarchies of color, uh, and we have social hierarchies, and people have to honor and respect those hierarchies. If you're born into a certain class, into a certain social class, you have to stick to it. If you're born in a high class, you have to stick there. If you're born in a class, low social class, you have to stick there. The idea of social mobility was not there yet. There are signs of going there. There were signs that social mobility is starting, but it wasn't fully implemented or seen. So social mobility was not accepted, was not heard of. So if you try to do something against the established order, you normally get penalized and punished for that. So again, two plays that talk about order, that talk about hierarchies, that talk about governance, and the framework, the suitable and the appropriate framework here would be the framework of the tragedy. Talk about the tragedy and what it means in a minute. Again, this is all about the Renaissance, and I'm not going to repeat what I have been saying here about the fact that the Renaissance means rebirth, the fact that it is a cultural and educational movement which began in Italy in late 13th century and in the early 14th century. And it was, and there was this revival of interest in and reviving of the art and culture of ancient Rome and Greece. Um, Again, we normally refer to this stage as the early modern times, which is obviously a transitional period between the Middle Ages and modernity. Again, what are we setting the Renaissance against? Whenever we talk about the Renaissance, we compare it to the Middle Ages. And if we're talking about, uh, literature, we're comparing between the tragedy and the revenge tragedy in the Elizabethan and Jacobean times. We're comparing it to the mystery and religious and morality plays of the Middle Ages. Again, if we talk about the Renaissance and we talk about the theater, we need to know that there were acting companies, and those companies were sponsored by the rich, and the plays produced were scrutinized by the government. The play that we're doing is Othello, of course, by Shakespeare, and it is a tragedy. What do I know about the tragedy? Tragedy has a number of characteristics. With a tragedy, you normally have the death of the main character of the protagonist, who is usually a man of high birth and exceptional abilities and qualities. Over time, we will have occasions where the tragic hero or the protagonist is a woman, which is obviously quite unprecedented. So, what does a tragedy involve? A tragedy involves a conflict between a remarkable individual, whom we call the tragic hero, and a powerful shaping force such as fate, God, or authority. Who wins at the end? Obviously, it's the the powerful shaping force or authority like God or fate or the conventions of society. What else do we know? We know that Othello is, together with being a tragedy, it is a revenge tragedy and it is a domestic tragedy. Revenge tragedy means that there is going to be bloody struggles, there is going to be revenge, there is going to be bloodshed. Domestic, when I say that it is a domestic tragedy, I mean that it concerns and focuses on the domestic realm of the family and it focuses on marriage. And love is ubiquitous in uh, those kinds of domestic tragedies. Okay, so revenge tragedy is those kinds of plays where the revenger struggles to find justice in a world in which the privileged abuse their power and fail to govern with fairness. So, the aim of a tragedy, according to Aristotle, is to create a catharsis. What do I mean by catharsis? I mean the purging and the cleansing of strong emotions so that we reach this stage of release where spectators and audiences are supposed to leave the theater relieved of any excessive emotions. So Othello is the story of star-crossed lovers. Star-crossed lovers. Star-crossed lovers means that they are not lucky, and their love was not approved by society and ended tragically. And this is perhaps, or perhaps a question uh, um, uh, arises here. Why was their love not approved by society? Any idea from whatever we said last time? Why do you think this kind of love was not approved, was not accepted? Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah, Abdullah, go ahead.
Uh, it has a lot of tragedy situations in between, so it couldn't be end with love and
No, no,
uh,
this is not my question. I'm saying that this kind of love was fated, was doomed, and it was met by disapproval by society. Why? So obviously we have a man and a wife, a woman, and they want to get married. What's wrong with that? What was wrong with that? Remember from last time? Remember when we talk about this idea of hierarchies, the fact that you have a hierarchy of color, where if you're born white and somebody else is born black, and you guys fall in love, this is something society wouldn't condone or approve because you belong to two different races, two different colors. So if you insist and if you take it to the next level and get married, you will be punished for that, right? So Othello is about just that, the fact that Othello is black and Desdemona is white. She is on top of the social ladder and he is at the bottom because of his color and his race. Okay, they, against all the odds, they get married. So will they get away with it? Will they live happily ever after? The answer is no, because this kind of union is not approved by society. What happens to them? You will see one of them gets kills the other, and then uh, um, and commits suicide. So obviously something is wrong. What is it that they did wrong? It was the fact that they reached out in spite of the fact that they know that they belong to two different classes, two different races, two different colors. So Othello, the play, is a tragedy, and what tragedies normally focused on upper classes, and marriage in these upper classes was with a political and economic transaction, where the desires of the bride and the bridegroom meant little. Nobody would consult Othello about who she wants to get married to. No, this was not, a common thing. That so for Desdemona, the bride, to decide to get married to the one that her heart chose was wrong, and she had to pay for that. So, marriage for love in such plays involves not just defying the family authority, but also marrying outside one's race or class. This is the problem with Othello, and also to some degree with the Duchess of Malfi. The fact that you have characters who marriage for love. And if you marry for love, and obviously you're marrying against the will and the plans of your family. And normally in these circumstances, you would have somebody marrying outside his or her race or class, which is obviously another problem. So again, the reason why love fails in this case would be because of the internal weakness or external pressure. And this is exactly what we're seeing with Othello. So what do we have here? What do those different pictures have in common? They are pictures of what? A European? What do you think?
Um, Doctor,
Hmm.
do you mean the pictures? What do they mean?
No, what comes to your mind when you see them?
I think he comes from Morocco.
Yeah, so we're talking about, um, my question was whether we're talking about a European or perhaps an African, and you said that this is Moroccan or African, right?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Um, Again, um, in a European context, that would be a rarity or something that is scarce. You don't see it much in Europe during the time, right? Lujain, are you the one who's talking, or would you like to talk or what?
No, I didn't answer. It was a different student. I would say
Mm,
also even the facial expressions resembles which class he's coming from.
mm. Well, if he is African, and if he lives in Africa, he can be a king. When it comes to, I mean, the color would make a difference if he lives in Europe, right? But if we are all African and live in Africa, of course we have kings, we have queens, right? And we have commoners who look the same, right? So the problem is that the people that we're referring to are not in Africa, where they are like everybody else. They are in Europe, And in Europe, you have conventions and traditions that you shouldn't kind of challenge or go against. Let's move on. Again, these are all pictures of what the Europeans used to think of non-Europeans. You have people whose color skin is obviously different from this of the Europeans. Those are dark, brown, and black, and obviously they are in Africa. So in Africa, you're fine. In India, you're fine. You get married to whomever you like in Africa because you're the same color, the same race. But in Europe, if you're black and you're only thinking of getting married to a white girl, that's where the problems arise. Again, we're not talking about the Europe of the late 20th century and early 21st century, where obviously we don't have that anymore. What can you see here? What is this?
Is that
Yeah.
ball?
What?
Apple?
Not really. It's smaller than that. No, we're talking about like what do they call it? They call it a ram. You know what a ram is? Okay. So let's look at it's an animal after all, but what kind of what kind of what kind of impressions does it trigger at the back of your minds? Is it does he look good to you? Go ahead.
He looks scary.
Uh,
Hmm? What do you notice?
it's
Okay.
a different a little bit. يعني it looks like a goat when I saw it for the first time.
Yeah, it is a
But
goat. It's a goat.
i-
It's perhaps a male goat, but
yeah,
it's
but it has a different race.
perhaps it's a little bit wild.
Yeah,
Okay. So does it look that do you feel comfortable looking at it?
not real.
Okay, especially if you compare it to this. What do you think of this?
Um, I can say that
Yeah.
we usually see it, so it's normal for us.
Yeah, this one is normal, right? This one
Yeah,
is perhaps more comfortable to look at,
yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah.
So this is the European perception. This is, like I said, this is a black ram, and obviously it looks scary. And this is a ewe, right? Very cute, very nice looking. Okay. So the Europeans, and in the play, as you're going to see, and they have an agent that we call Iago, is comparing Othello to this ram, and is comparing Desdemona to this ewe. Are you getting the idea? So the black ram is getting married to this lovely ewe. So this is how the Europeans in the play look at this kind of relationship. Okay, are you getting the image?
Yeah.
So obviously
Yes.
Yes.
it's a marriage of equals. I don't believe they are equal because this is black, this is scary, and this is very cute, very sweet, lovely, meek, and all those kinds of things, right? So this is the whole premise. The fact that we have a marriage of it's not the right kind of marriage according to them. Okay, let's move on. So Desdemona, the white girl, the white Venetian European girl, wants to get married to Othello. Othello is black, is African, comes from what is now Algeria and Morocco. He looks different. And of course, because like we said, marriage is transactional during the time where only the families of the bride and the bridegroom decide uh, 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 everything. Um, Marrying for Desdemona to decide to marry somebody who is outside her race and outside her color, obviously, is not without its impediments. You know what impediments are? Impediments are obstacles and hardships that you meet and that you encounter. So, impediments are obstructions and hindrances and obstacles. Any physical defect that impedes normal or easy speech. Obviously, we're talking about the first meaning obstructions, hindrances, and obstacles. And the chapter that we're doing is aptly enough called entitled Impediments to Love. So, love, we know, right? We know any two people can fall in love with each other. But what about impediments? And what are the impediments that we are foreseeing from what I've been saying about the play? What are those impediments to love that we will have with regards to the marriage of Othello and Desdemona? What will stand
Social
in the way? Yeah, Lujain.
social circumstances,
Can you specify?
different social hierarchies.
Yeah, the fact that we have, hierarchies of color. She's white and he's black. Yeah. The fact that she's on top of the social ladder and he is at the bottom, right? So what happens if they insist? They insist that they to go ahead and get married. Will they get away with it?
No.
No, they wouldn't, I promise you. Okay. So impediments to love. Okay, so let's stop on this note and with this item and take a 10-minute break. And then when we come back, we continue. So I'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay? Say okay.
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 Okay. Can you hear me? If you guys are back, raise your hands.
Yes.
Okay. So where did we stop? And how do you find the journey? Interesting enough?
Yes, it's really interesting.
Nice. Okay, good. So before we proceed, I remember that I asked you to perhaps read Othello. And I know that asking you to read the whole play would be a little bit asking too much. So did you do any reading? Did you do did you read a summary?
Yes.
Okay. Lujain, you did read a summary or you're perhaps reading the play and halfway through? Did you
I
read that?
just read the idea of the story.
Okay, that's interesting enough. Okay, who else? Nobody else? Ola? So what are you waiting for, guys? Hmm? Okay, so let's proceed. Again, this is the play, and we're starting the play. That's Othello, like I said. And the full title of the play is The Tragedy of Othello, the Moor of Venice. So let's unpack the title. So obviously, Othello is a name. So when I say the tragedy of Othello, so what do you think of the name? Is it a European name like William, Jefferson, Max?
No.
No, obviously not, right? So it right from the very beginning, you can almost tell that we're in for somebody who is not from Europe. Okay, and we're saying the tragedy of Othello. So you can understand the word tragedy on two levels. So the literal meaning of the word tragedy would be about suffering and agony, right? And the technical meaning would refer us to the idea of a dramatic framework that we call tragedy, the Shakespearean tragedy, the Greek tragedy, right? So the tragedy of Othello, the Moor of Venice. Venice, we know. Where is Venice? Where is Venice? Is it in Africa? You don't know where Venice is? Are you sure? Where is Venice? In Asia? Africa?
It's in
You,
Europe.
that's Europe, absolutely. Okay, so it's very strange. We're saying the of Venice, which means that he is of Venice. He belongs to Venice, right? Which is very strange because we're saying that his name is not European. Okay, so it's the Othello of Venice, right? But we have the word Moor, and the word Moor is a reference to the color of his skin and perhaps his ethnicity. So we know from the literature that a Moor is an inhabitant of Europe that has his origins in Africa, more specifically in North Africa, more specifically in what is now known as Algeria and Morocco. See? So it's very complicated, right? Where obviously we have a tragedy of um, a Moor by the name of Othello, who lives and stays in Venice, right?
Yeah.
So this is the play, and because it's a play, it is divided into acts. And the standard number of acts in a tragedy is five. You normally have five acts, with
Mm-mm.
Act One serving as some kind of introduction, and Act Five serving as some kind of resolution,
Mm.
the end of a play. So between Act One and Act Five, lots of things happen, and a lot of water goes under the bridge. So typically, in Act One, like I said, you have scene one where we have what we call the exposition of the play. Can I ask whoever is keeping her mic on? Zainab, can I ask you to mute your mic? Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't notice that.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so we're talking now about Act One, Scene One, where the exposition is. So with expositions, we have most of the characters are given, they come physically, or they are spoken about. We have hints about what will happen, which is called foregrounding or foreshadowing. So foreshadowing is about people uh, dropping hints about what may happen in the future. Um, we in the exposition we don't normally have the main character. He or she is spoken about for so long to build excitement, to build an aura of mystery, perhaps, and suspense. Does this apply to Othello? Absolutely, where the appearance of Othello is delayed until pretty much everybody talks about him. And you have this polarity or polarization over his character, where people give him credit as an exceptional character, as a military leader, a great strategist, somebody who served Venice for so long and so hard. And you have people who are looking only at his color, at his skin being African, being black. And so, what do we see in the exposition of the play? Who do we meet? We meet Iago and Rodrigo. Iago and Rodrigo, of course, are white. They are white Venetians, and Iago is an assistant to Othello. Can you see right from the very start? You have Iago, who is white. He is subservient to Othello. Okay, that can, without spoiling it, can tell you that um, perhaps the rivalry and enmity is very inherent and even structural. It has nothing to do with Iago being mean, with Iago being selfish and cunning. Right from the very beginning, structurally, he is white and Othello is black, and Othello is his superior. Okay? So what we have Rodrigo and who is also white, and Iago, and obviously they are talking, and from whatever they say, we see that Iago is also addressing Rodrigo in a polite manner because obviously Rodrigo is higher in social rank and social status. And what is it that they are talking about? What is common and what do they share? They share the interest in Othello and Desdemona's life. The fact that Rodrigo is in love with Desdemona, and Iago is kind of deceiving him into the belief that he can help him get married to Desdemona. And obviously, uh, he takes money from him to do that. So from their conversations and revelations, we get to know that Iago has been passed over for promotion. He was supposed to be promoted by Othello, but instead of promoting him, Othello promoted Cassio. And obviously, Iago feels angry and humiliated. And he starts to talk in a sarcastic, mocking, and disrespectful way about Othello, referring to him, saying at one point, uh, moreship, which is obviously like a play on the word lordship. Of course, Moor would refer to his ethnicity and his color. So instead of saying worship or lordship, he is saying moreship. So as you can see, people in the audience hear a lot about Othello, but they are not going to see him until scene 3. The audience can feel that some kind of conspiracy or disruption is lurking behind. Okay, so we have Iago given the stage before the advent of Othello. And this was a golden time for Iago to show us and demonstrate to us what he is all about. You can feel that he is quick, he has this verbal inventiveness, and if you compare him with Rodrigo, he will win in terms of how he speaks, in terms of even his intelligence and smartness. So Iago is presented from the start as a bluff and somewhat cynical soldier. And we are led as members of the audience to appreciate Iago's alertness and his readiness to attack those whom he believes have been given preference over him, and we mean Cassio in this case. He refers to Cassio as an arithmetician, and obviously the word arithmetician means that he knows about the abstract theory of war, but not the practicalities of soldiering. He's obviously this is demeaning. This is saying something against Cassio and perhaps challenging his uh, um, ability to engage in wars. Still, we are with Iago, and we get to know that Iago is very uh, like we said, he's a very cunning guy. He's very smart. He is given to saying something when he means something else. And he even says it. He says, I am not what I am. So he is someone who seems to be saying he will not show everyone who and what he is because he has peculiar ends and goals. He has his own aims and ambitions. So over time, from whatever speeches and soliloquies Iago is going to engage in, we as members of the audience become aware of how devious um, Iago is. He manages to project himself and to dominate all the people around him, including Rodrigo. Again, in order to perhaps complete this profile about Iago, we will look at other aspects in his character. The fact that he has those racist elements to his character. Like we said, he repeatedly referred to Othello not by his name, but as the Moor. And of course, there are negative undertones to that. And then, of course, Rodrigo will sing along and play along by referring to Othello as thick-lipped. Again, this is going to be repeated by all the white characters, it seems. Again, what we also notice from Iago and then later from Othello is the fact that they are using figurative language, a language that would mean something at the surface value, but surface level, but deep down it may mean something. A language that is metaphorical, where sometimes you compare yourself to mountains, to rivers, to birds. Sometimes you refer to yourself and you associate yourself with different parts of the body. So this is called figurative language, and it's not uh, uh, given to everyone. So, like when Iago, for example, refers to himself and what he does by saying that he wears his heart in his own sleeves. So obviously, no one ever really wears their heart on their sleeve. So what the expression conveys or means is how it can feel to open one's heart to others unreservedly. Again, we're going to see that happening with the character of Othello, especially. Again, we need to also remember that part of this project, dramatic project, is how the play is written. The play is written in blank verse. Blank verse is this kind of verse that we otherwise refer to as free, where the writer does not have to stick to certain rhyme schemes because that can be very constricting and very limiting. So the best kind of poetry or verse that can be used here is what we call blank verse. And blank verse is unrhymed iambic pentameter. And an iambic pentameter is a line of 10 syllables that fall into 5 measures of 2 syllables each, in which one unstressed syllable is followed by one stressed syllable. And we have examples, as you can see, from speeches by Iago, for example. So why does Shakespeare use blank verse? And obviously, uh, 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 for two reasons. First of all, blank verse is easy to remember. If we talk about actors acting on the play in a play and doing rehearsals, getting their act together, they have to know how to memorize. And if it's blank verse, if it's rhymed lines that they are reading with minimum restrictions, they are likely to remember their lines. This is one thing. The the second thing about blank verse is that it is easy to say a line uh, using blank verse that sounds natural because the rhythm is based on the rhythm of everyday English speech. Again, we're still talking about Iago, where he moves from Rodrigo to Parpancio, and Parpancio is the father of Desdemona. Again, the father of Desdemona will discover that she eloped with uh, Othello. He will get to know that she um, fell in love with Othello and then got married to him and eloped. And very strange, for all the admiration that Propancio has for Othello, he cannot find it in his heart to bless and kind of accept this kind of marriage. So Parapancio and Othello were friends. Parapancio is a senator who knows the real worth of Othello. He has seen firsthand what Othello does or did for Venice, defending it and everything. But he is part of a structure and a hierarchy, and obviously he cannot challenge that. The fact that he is white and his daughter is white, and Othello is black. Yeah, we may be friends, we can be friends, but we cannot be in-laws, it seems. Because if Parabancio accepts this kind of marriage, and perhaps if he places it, this is going against the established order, which says that there is a hierarchy that we have to honor. So my daughter, Desdemona, and myself, Parapancio, are on top of the social ladder. We are white, and Othello, no matter how exceptional and how noble he is black and he is at the bottom of the social ladder. So Parapancio's reaction is structural, is negative in a structural way, because this is the structure of society. So Iago is going to provoke Brabantio. He's going to tell him things that no father would like to hear about his daughter. Again, this is where the image I told you about earlier is, where there is a reference to Othello as an old black ram, and Desdemona being referred to as white hue. So the ram was associated with lust and sexual potency, and this is obviously an allusion to Othello. Um, so Othello's race is being connected with rampant sexuality, darkness, and evil. So Iago uses language to suggest that Demona is being sexually defiled. She is, according to Iago's imagination, being covered by a Barbary horse. Even the word Barbary is a reference to Africans and to North Africans. And even nowadays, I mean, some people use the word Barbary, even in Arabic culture. I want to say Barbary, for example. Of course, it's the meaning there that, I mean, then and now. In order to also fill in gaps or the rest of the gaps, and the rest of the puzzle about the character of Iago, we're going to refer to another aspect of his character, which is his views, especially when it comes to love. And you can almost tell that a guy like that would not think of love as a pure, innocent exercise where two people fall in love and they eventually get married. And no, for him, love is something else. So Iago's consistent way of representing love has to do with this, with his concept of it as being animal lust. Again, it's also coupled with this idea of racism and evil. So for him, love is far from being platonic. Love is about desire and lust, unfortunately. We're now moving from the profile of Iago to the profile of Parpancio. We spoke about Parpancio. We said that he is a Venetian senator, well liked and well and very respected. But he is a typical European with a typical mindset, especially when it comes to women. For him, women are no more than pieces of property, especially his daughter. Parabancio thinks that some kind of, let's focus on how he looks at his daughter. His attitude to his daughter and to women in general is one of, seeing them as possession and property, something that can be stolen from him. Uh, uh, um, it's they are mere objects. They cannot be consulted, and they shouldn't be consulted when it comes to love and marriage, and that's why he was so astonished to see his daughter kind of challenging all those ideas and getting married to what he thinks is the wrong person. That's why he believes that his daughter, if she is in her right mind, internalizing feelings of inferiority as a daughter and as a woman, thinking of herself as mere property, she wouldn't do that uh, unless she is under the spell of magic. So Parvati think that some kind of witchcraft must have robbed him of his daughter. And then comes the time when Othello enters the stage. And let's look at his language. Let's look at the fact that he is being put in a corner where he has to defend himself. His opening words are brief but eloquent, suggesting a man of seriousness, dignity, authority, and weight. And of course, if you compare him to the speech of Iago and Rodrigo before him, obviously the language was crass, lascivious, full of animal imagery. There was those sexual overtones to them. And of course, you would also compare Othello's language to that of Parapansio. And Othello starts by defending himself. He says that his services to Venice shall outtongue his complaints. Obviously, his is a reference to Parpansio, and complaints are uh, a reference to what Parpansio thinks happened to his daughter. He believes that somehow Othello exercised magic on her. He cast a spell, a magical spell on her, because he believes that a white Venetian girl in her right mind wouldn't get married to a black guy. So Othello is defending himself, and he's saying the services that I did for this country are way bigger than those that Parabancho himself did. And he starts to talk about himself as being, yeah, it is true that I may be black, but I am royalty. Where I come from, I am from the royal family. But I don't talk about it. Again, we will also notice that perhaps this is a feeling of insecurity that Othello was made to feel, and he was reduced to the fact that he finds himself defending himself, and perhaps sometimes even without asking nobody, without people not asking him to defend himself. So in his speech, in his defense speech, defending himself and his love, he talks about what he feels for Desdemona, and you can almost tell that his views of love are totally, at least at this stage, are totally different from those of Iago. So his language is high, browse, and there are those daring comparison that signal a man of large scope and imagination beyond those smaller beings around him. His language has a rhythm, an idiom that contrasts sharply with those of many of the characters around him, not only Iago. And his rhetoric gives an impression of space and vastness. And here is an example where obviously Othello is using the word unhoused, and this is obviously a very vivid uh, image. So for no Iago, but that I love the gentle Desdemona, I wouldn't my unhoused free condition put into circumscription and confined for the sea's word. Very highly poetic language where he talks about himself as being unhoused. Unhoused means stranger, not naturalized, not a citizen. So this word, unhoused, describes Othello's condition, and it reflects the fact that he is, of course, not a citizen of Venice, unlike Parapansio, who is housed. But obviously, the difference is so big in terms of the services that Parapansio did for his country and the services that uh, Othello did. Obviously, uh, it's to Othello's credit that he kind of defended Venice so many times, and he was a real defender of Venice. What we also notice and take away from Othello's speeches and language would be the idea that he is different, obviously, from whoever are around him. Uh, and he uses the imagery of the sea because obviously he moves around, he comes and goes because he's a soldier and he goes into battles and wars. What we also take away from Othello's speech is this tendency to create an image of himself as linked to the forces of nature, whether we're talking about the sea, the sky, the deserts, and the mountains. He doesn't link himself to the order and manners of the city and civilization. So these are cosmic, these are bigger uh, things, bigger than himself. Again, if anything, it shows us that he believes in his abilities against all odds. So, out of his defense, it becomes clear how much deeper and broader is Othello's life experience and history than that of the Venetians around him. Wild adventures, battlefields, defense, military. So, the sheer richness of Othello's language is surely something that influences us, not only the wonders of his exotic life story, but many phrases that he used. So, it's not only the stories that he tells, it's also the language that he is telling those stories with. He also speaks about Desdemona, and that shows the purity of his love and his good intentions. Desdemona in her father's eyes is maiden, never bold, the epitome of feminine modesty. Othello, of course, he loves her beyond words, but he is also hinting at the fact that uh, um, she was willing. I think I'll stop here because next time we will talk more about the what we call the Othello music, as it's a concept that got perpetuated by Wilson Knight, and we'll talk more about that, inshallah, next time. So before we leave, do you guys have any questions?
No, thanks, Victor.
Clear, doctor.
Okay, fine. I'll see you next time. So, Assalamu alaikum.